Welcome back to another episode with ByrdAdatto. And as we keep talking about reopening of medical practices, we've been looking at different states. We've already looked at Illinois, and today we're going to look at New York. And the reason why is every single state, the way they're slowly reopening it, they have different nuances to it. And so today, Michael, we have a special guest to help us work through New York. Who do we have today?
We have Patrick O'Brien with ByrdAdatto and current Senior Legal Counsel for the American Med Spa Association. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, and so today we're going to cover kind of two areas and it gets very confusing because a lot of states, based on what their governor allows, has certain controls versus counties versus cities. But the first thing I think, Michael, a lot of people want to understand is in New York, as it reopens the state, is elective medicine allowed in New York right now?
So for context, of course, New York has been one of the bigger hot zones, the biggest hot zone in the country. And certain office-based visits going to a medical office have been open as essential all along. And as we are expanding, there are certain things that are still closed. So certified surgery centers and other facilities where you can do procedures are still closed in most areas. And so right now, kind of, office-based medical office visits are open, and there's, as we'll talk about, and when we start applying that to non-invasive elective procedures, where does that fit? I think there's good reason to proceed cautiously because there are several factors to consider.
Which I think is a great segue into, since the medical office can be open, a lot of people, Patrick, will ask the next question, which is, well, does that mean my med spa can be open in New York?
And that, of course, is the common lawyer answer of it depends. It's pretty unclear. So medical spas are not a specially licensed thing in New York as a separate license. So they're really considered a doctor's office. Under kind of a strict reading of the orders that are out, it doesn't seem like they were ordered closed because essential healthcare operations include doctors and doctors' offices and like walk-in care, healthcare clinics, things like that. But other orders, like other aesthetic establishments like salons and regular spas are closed. And for a very long time, elective surgeries were prohibited as well. And so they sort of fall into this kind of no man's land where they may technically be allowed to be open, but there are other things that are similar to it that are not.
And so that's where I think we fall into this area where legally a medical office can be open. And as you just articulated, a med spa, if it's done correctly in New York, is a medical office, and therefore it should be open. But that leads us to where the same issue happened to our Texas clients. When Texas started reopening, there's a lot of confusion as to, can I open my medical practice and can I open my med spa? And I think, Michael, when we diagnosed that last time, let's use some of that same application here in New York, is with these two conflicting thoughts, how would you advise someone in New York who has a med spa and is legal because it's owned by a physician as it has to be in New York? What would be the things that you would talk to them about?
Well, I think I would not be doing a good job if I just put my attorney hat on and said, legally, because you're a medical practice, you can open and just leave it at that. And it's somewhat tempting to do that. Us as lawyers see really clearly that by definition, a med spa is a medical practice and medical practices can be open. It is more complicated than that. And really the complicating factor deals with perception. And that's where I agree with Patrick as he talked about these other types of aesthetic services like spas as an analogy. Even though they are legally not the same thing, they're licensed by different bodies. From a public perception perspective, most people don't know the difference between a spa and a med spa. And the important people that we're talking about are the people that are enforcing it. And so we have seen in different areas of the country, the police show up to a medical spa because they were reported by a citizen that, this med spa is open and they shouldn't be. And they were really thinking of a spa. And so the question we would ask, a client in New York is, are you prepared for the increased risk that, someone's going to show up at your door, whether that's a governing body or the news, and how are you, prepared to deal with that? And I think the final point, and Brad, you and I have talked quite a bit about this, is that if you are going to open, tread carefully, and it is imperative that you're compliant. And we know a lot of clients who come in and they don't have their house in order. They may have the incorrect ownership. In New York, particularly Manhattan, it's common to misuse estheticians for medical services. And if you're doing that and you have estheticians doing medical things that they're not allowed to be doing, you're going to go from one thing that you think you can do into a whole new set of problems if an investigation gets started.
Yeah, and the other thing I think what I would say is, again, assume that you're set up correctly and you have the right people doing the right services. And on top of the medical services that you have in your facility, you have separately salon-like services. We would recommend that you do not render those salon-like services. So the facials and other things that you may have done just in general, because those are still not allowed to be open in New York. Do not try to think just because my medical practice can be open, I can just start rendering those same exact salon-like services. Because again, we believe that will again expose you to someone coming in and saying those activities are not allowed, and so I'm going to shut you down completely, even though your medical services are allowed. Patrick, you have any other follow-ups?
I would just say so some areas of New York are able to open in this kind of phased opening. They think that phase 2 will be where professional services such as salons and spas may be allowed to start being open. But the earliest that can happen is within 2 weeks after the area qualifies for phase 1. So we still have a little bit more time before there's more guidance, and hopefully by then it will be more clear.
Awesome. Michael?
I think we got it.
Awesome. Well, Patrick, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all the next time.